thought this was over. You thought there was nothing left to say. Oh, but there is. There's a gargoyle, a 1,000-year-old warrior made of stone and fury and grief who loved a woman of his own kind. They were mates. They led a clan together. They had a daughter, and the world destroyed that love. Not because it wasn't real, not because they didn't fight for it, but because trauma and time and 1,000 years of hatred turned the person he loved into someone he couldn't recognize anymore. And then that same gargoyle fell in love with a human woman, a woman from a completely different species, a woman he can't walk down the street with, a woman he can't grow old with, a woman that everything about the world they live in says he shouldn't love. And he loves her anyways. And she loves him back. And that is the story, the love story, at the center of Gargoyles. And for 30 plus years, the fandom has been tearing itself apart over one question. Should Goliath be with Demona, or should he be with Elisa Maza? And today I'm answering it for real. No hedging, no, well, they're both great. I'm going to make the strongest possible case for Demona. I'm going to make the strongest possible case for Elisa. And then I'm going to tell you where I land, and I'm going to defend it. And some of you are going to disagree with me. And that's fine, because this debate doesn't have a clean answer. That's what makes it one of the greatest love stories in animation history.
Listen in with Lindsey.
Welcome to Listen In with Lindsey. I am Lindsey. Hey everyone, welcome back. I am so happy you're here. If you are new to this channel, hi, I'm Lindsey. I am an award-winning bilingual voice actress and singer based in Los Angeles. I've been working in animation, anime dubbing, commercials, and children's entertainment for over a decade. I've got Netflix credits. I've voiced 5+ characters on Caillou for Wild Brain in Spanish. I've won awards for, a Dunkin' commercial I did. And the reason I'm telling you all of this is because when I talk about voice acting and animation on this show, I'm not just a fan theorizing from my couch. I live inside the industry. I know what goes into building a character from the ground up. And that perspective is going to matter a lot. So let's get into it, because today is a bonus episode. If you've been following this channel, you know that we just finished an epic 3-part deep dive into the Hunter's Moon trilogy from Gargoyles, the season 2 finale, one of the greatest story arcs in the history of animation. And we went scene by scene. We broke down Keith David's vocal performance as Goliath. We analyzed Salli Richardson's 2 different versions of Elisa. We talked about Marina Sirtis' turning Demona into one of the most complex villains ever animated. We covered the Hitchcock bomb under the table technique, the interspecies romance, the generational trauma of the Hunter legacy, all of it. If you haven't seen that 3-part series, please go watch it first. I will link all 3 parts in the description, pin it in the comments, and right here on the screen. This bonus episode assumes you know the show. We are going deep today, and I am not stopping to explain who these characters are. You either know or you need to go catch up. I'll wait, and I've got snacks. Okay, for my people who are here and ready, let's get into this, okay? So here's why I wanted to do this bonus episode. Throughout the 3-part series, I kept coming back to the question, and every time I touched on it, the comments exploded. Team Demona, Team Elisa, you're wrong, Lindsey, and here's why. Goliath brings with Demona, and I'll die on this hill. Elisa is his soulmate, don't even start. And I loved every single one of those comments because they told me something important. This debate isn't just about shipping preferences. It's about what we believe love is. It's about whether love is defined by history or by choice, by shared identity or by shared values, by who you were with or who you're becoming with. These are real questions. These are questions that matter in our actual lives, not just a 90s cartoon about stone creatures on a castle in Manhattan. So I want to do this properly, not a quick hot take, a full, honest, messy, almost hour-long exploration, because both sides deserve it. Yes, they do. Before we dive in, let me set some ground rules for how I'm approaching this, because I want to be fair. Rule number 1, I'm going to play devil's advocate for Demona hard, like uncomfortably hard. I need you to understand that when I'm making the Demona case, I am not softballing it. I'm going to make the strongest, most emotionally compelling argument for why Goliath belongs with her, even if it makes you mad, even if it makes me mad, because if I don't steelman the Demona argument, this whole exercise is pointless. Rule number 2, I am going to earn the Elisa case. I'm not going to coast on, well, Elisa is obviously better. If Elisa is the right answer, I need to explain why she's the right answer. And that means grappling with the real cost of their relationship, the things they sacrifice, the things they'll never have. I'm not going to pretend interspecies love is easy just because it's beautiful. Rule number 3, I'm going to give you my real answer at the end, and I'm going to defend it. And if you disagree, you better come correct in those comments, because I will be reading every single one of them. All right, let's start with the case that nobody wants to make, but everybody needs to hear. Are you ready for it? This is the case for Demona, the love you can't erase. Demona, I know, stay with me. Let me take you back. It's 994 AD Scotland, Castle Wyvern, and there are 2 gargoyles, young, fiercely, deeply in love, who are leading their clan together. They don't have names yet because gargoyles in this era don't use names in the way humans do, but we know them. He will become Goliath, she will become Demona. And right now, in this moment, they are everything to each other. I need you to sit with that, because before the betrayal, before the hatred, before 1,000 years of warfare and pain twisted Demona into the character we know in the modern timeline, there was this. 2 beings who looked at each other and said, it's you for the rest of our lives. And this wasn't puppy love. This wasn't a teenage crush that they grew out of. Gargoyles mate for life. That's canon. When a gargoyle chooses a mate, it's a permanent, soul-deep commitment. So when Goliath and Demona became mates, that wasn't a let's see how this goes situation. That was a vow. That was the gargoyle equivalent of till death do us part. Except for gargoyles, even death doesn't always end it, because their love is tied to their identity as a species, as a clan, as a people. They fought side by side. They protected their clan together. They made decisions together. And they had a daughter, Angela, a biological child, a living, breathing testament to their bond. Angela exists because of their love. You cannot erase that. No amount of hatred or time or distance can change the fact that Goliath and Demona created a life together. That is a bond that transcends everything else. Now, here's where I need you to really listen, because this is where I'm going to say something that might make you just a smidgen uncomfortable. Demona's betrayal at Castle Wyvern, the one that led to the massacre of the clan, the one that set everything in motion, are you following? Her intentions were to save them. I am not excusing the outcome. The outcome was catastrophic. The clan was destroyed. Goliath and the survivors were cursed to 1,000 years of stone sleep. It was a disaster of apocalyptic proportions. But Demona's original plan, her deal with the captain of the guard, was not let me destroy my own people. It was let me get the humans out of the castle so the clan is safe. She was trying to protect them. She was trying to remove the human threat so that her family, her mate, her clan, her people could live in peace. Was she naive? Yes. Was she manipulated? Of course, absolutely. Did her plan go horrifically wrong? Obviously. But the seed of her betrayal was love. It was a mother and a mate trying to keep her family alive in a world that wanted them gone. And that matters. It doesn't excuse what happened, but it matters because it means Demona didn't start as a villain. She started as a protector who made a terrible, terrible, horrific miscalculation. And the guilt of that, the weight of knowing that her attempt to save the clan was what destroyed the clan, that is what broke her. Here's why this matters for the debate. The Demona that Goliath fell in love with was not the Demona of the modern timeline. The Demona that Goliath fell in love with was fierce, yes, aggressive, yes, suspicious of humans, yes, and honestly, given the way humans treated gargoyles in 994 AD, was she wrong to be suspicious? But she was also loyal, protective, loving. She was Goliath's partner in the truest sense. And that version of Demona didn't die. She got buried under centuries of grief, guilt, rage, and trauma. But she's still in there. And you can see it in the show, even in the modern timeline. Even after everything, there are moments where you catch a glimpse of who Demona used to be, a flicker in her eyes when she looks at Goliath, a crack in the armor when Angela reaches out to her, a split second where the rage drops and you see the grief underneath, and it is devastating because you realize that Demona isn't just angry, she's heartbroken. She has been heartbroken for 1,000 years, and she doesn't know how to be anything else anymore. Theory time. I want you to consider something. If Demona could heal, and I mean really, truly heal, let go of the hatred, process the trauma, find her way back to who she was before the massacre, wouldn't she and Goliath be perfect? Think about it. They share a species. They share a history that spans over a millennium. They have a child together. They both understand what it means to be a gargoyle in a world dominated by humans. The fear, the hiding, the constant threat of discovery. They have warrior chemistry. They fought together, bled together, survived together. The foundation of their love is forged in fire. And there are no barriers, no interspecies complications, no you turn to stone and I don't problem, no we can never be seen together in public dilemma. A healed Demona and Goliath could have a life together, a real, full, uncomplicated life. They could raise Angela as a family. They could lead the clan side by side the way they were always meant to. They could be whole. The Demona argument at its core is an argument about redemption. It's the argument that says the person you loved isn't gone. They're just lost. And if you fight hard enough, if you love hard enough, if you hold on long enough, you can bring them back. You can fight the version of them that you fell in love with underneath all the damage. And I know that argument resonates with people because most of us have been there. Most of us have loved someone who changed, someone who let their pain turn them into someone we didn't recognize. And we held on because we remembered who they were. We held on because we believed they could be that person again. And there's something beautiful about that kind of faith, even when it's a little misplaced. That is the case for Demona. And if you don't feel the weight of it, go rewatch Vows. Go rewatch The Reckoning. Go rewatch any scene where Goliath looks at Demona and you can see him remembering. See him reaching across 1,000 years of ruin, trying to find the woman he loved in the wreckage of who she became. It's tragic. It's heartbreaking. And it's real. Let me go deeper on the tragedy because I think a lot of fans shorthand it as Demona betrayed the clan and stopped there. But the full picture is so much more complicated than that, and it matters for understanding her relationship with Goliath. The gargoyles at Castle Wyvern were not living in paradise. They were tolerated. That's an important word. Tolerated. The humans in the castle needed the gargoyles for protection. At night, the gargoyles defended the castle from invaders. During the day, the gargoyles were stone, helpless, vulnerable, and the humans knew that. Some of the humans in the castle actively despised the gargoyles. They smashed gargoyles in their stone sleep for fun. They treated them like guard dogs at best and monsters at worst. Demona saw this. She lived this. Every sunrise, she closed her eyes knowing that her clan was at the mercy of people who didn't see them as people. And the one human who was supposed to protect them, the captain of the guard who genuinely cared about the gargoyles, was powerless against the prejudice of the other humans in the castle. So when Demona made her deal with the captain, she wasn't acting out of malice. She was acting out of desperation. She had watched her people be humiliated, threatened, and destroyed while sleeping. She had begged Goliath to see the danger, and Goliath, noble, trusting, optimistic Goliath, kept believing that if they just protected the humans well enough, the humans would eventually accept them. Demona didn't have that faith. And here's the thing. History proved her right. Not about the solution. Her solution was catastrophic. But about the diagnosis, the humans at Castle Wyvern did betray the gargoyles. The attack did come. The clan was massacred. Everything Demona feared would happen happened. She was right to be afraid. She was just wrong about how to fix it. And Goliath could never fully see that, because Goliath's survival, being cursed to sound sleep, meant he skipped the 1,000 years that Demona endured. He went to sleep in 994 AD and woke up in 1994. For him, the massacre was yesterday. For Demona, it was 1,000 years ago. And every century in between was filled with more evidence that humans would always, always, always betray gargoyles. So when Goliath wakes up and says, we should trust the humans, we should live in peace, he's speaking from a position of innocence that Demona can't access anymore. He didn't live those 1,000 years. He didn't watch humans hunt gargoyles across continents and centuries. He didn't develop the scar tissue that Demona carries. And there's something almost cruel about his optimism, because it invalidates 1,000 years of her suffering. He gets to be the hero because he slept through the war. I told you I was going to play devil's advocate hard. Now, does any of this make Demona's modern day behavior acceptable? No. She tries to commit the G word. She attacks innocence. She manipulates Angela. She uses magic to curse suffering on a massive scale. She is, by any objective measure, a villain. I am not disputing that, but villains don't come from nowhere. And understanding where Demona's villainy comes from doesn't excuse it, but it does make the question of, could Goliath love her again, a lot more complex than she's evil next. Because Goliath doesn't see an evil person when he looks at Demona. He sees the person he loved wearing evil-like armor because she doesn't know how else to survive. And some days, some moments, the armor slips and he sees her, the real her, and it wrecks him. We need to talk about Angela because she is the living embodiment of everything complicated about the Goliath-Demona relationship. Angela is their daughter, their biological child. And in the Gargoyles universe, gargoyle children are raised communally. The whole clan raises them, not individual parents, but Angela was raised differently. She grew up on Avalon, separated from both her parents, and when she finally meets Goliath and Demona, she wants parents. She wants the relationship that she never had. She wants to be someone's daughter. And what she finds is a father who loves her unconditionally and a mother who is complicated. Demona's relationship with Angela is one of the most painful things in the show because Demona does love Angela. You can see it. Marina Sirtis puts in the performance. There are moments when Demona looks at Angela and the hardness in her voice just melts for a second. Just for a second, and then the walls go back up because Demona doesn't know how to love without control. She doesn't know how to be close to someone without trying to shape them into what she needs them to be. She tries to turn Angela against humanity. She tries to recruit her daughter into her war because in Demona's mind, loving Angela means protecting Angela from humans. And protecting Angela from humans means teaching her to hate them. And this is where the tragedy doubles back on itself, because the same instinct that led Demona to betray Castle Wyvern, the instinct to protect her family at any cost, is the instinct that destroys her relationship with her daughter. She keeps making the same mistake over and over. She keeps trying to save the people she loves by cutting them off from the world, and it keeps backfiring. For the Demona case, Angela matters because she represents a future that Goliath and Demona could have if Demona healed, if she could be the mother Angela deserves. There is a family waiting to be formed. Father, mother, daughter, same species, same clan, a complete unit, and Angela wants it. You can feel how badly Angela wants her parents to be okay, to be together, to be a family. For the Elisa case, Angela matters because she represents the cost of Goliath choosing Demona. Because if Goliath went back to Demona to give Angela a family, he'd be choosing a broken woman over a healthy relationship. He'd be modeling for his daughter that love means tolerating hatred, that you should stay with someone who hurts you because of history. And what kind of lesson is that for a young gargoyle trying to figure out who she is? Angela is the daughter in the middle, and her existence makes this debate impossible to resolve cleanly. Tell me in the comments, do you think Goliath has an obligation to try to rebuild a family with Demona for Angela's sake? Or is the healthier choice to show Angela that love doesn't mean going backward? I genuinely want to know what you think. So, sound off, okay? Before I move to the Elisa case, I need to give flowers to Marina Sirtis because her vocal performance as Demona is a huge part of why this debate even exists. If Demona were voiced by someone who played her as a one-note villain, just anger, just menace, just evil, this conversation would be over before it started. Nobody would argue for Goliath being with a cartoon bad guy. But Marina Sirtis does something extraordinary. She layers vulnerability underneath every single line of rage. Everyone, listen to the way she says Goliath's name. Really listen. It's never neutral. It's never just a word. When Demona says Goliath, there is a history in the way Marina wraps her voice around those 3 syllables. Sometimes it's fury, sometimes it's contempt, but underneath, always, 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 there's longing, there's grief, there's the ghost of a woman who used to say the name with love, and no matter how hard she tries to kill that ghost, it won't die. As someone who does the whole voice acting thing, I study performances like this because they teach me things I can't learn anywhere else. What Marina Sirtis does with Demona is what I call vocal archaeology. She buries the truth under layers, rage on top of pain, on top of love, on top of fear, and she lets the audience dig. She doesn't hand it to you. She makes you work for it. And when you find that buried vulnerability, it hits 100 times harder than if she just played Demona as sad. There's a scene, and I think about this constantly in The Reckoning, where Demona is talking to Angela and she's trying to justify herself. She's trying to explain why she hates humans, why the war is necessary, why Angela should join her. And on the surface, it's a villain recruitment speech. But listen to Marina's voice. Listen to the speed at which she talks. She's talking fast, faster than Demona usually talks. And that speed tells you everything. She's not confident. She's desperate. She's trying to get the words out before she loses her nerve. She's trying to convince Angela, but really she's trying to convince herself. And there's the microsecond, this breath in the middle of the speech where her voice almost breaks. Almost. She catches it. She covers it with anger. But it's there, and it tells you that somewhere inside Demona, there's a part of her that knows she's wrong, knows she's lost, knows that the hatred she's built her identity on is the very thing keeping her from love. She's desperate for it. That is why people are Team Demona, not because they think her approach is acceptable, because Marina Sirtis makes you feel the woman underneath the monster, and that woman deserves to be saved, even if saving her might be, shall we say, impossible. Let's get to Elisa. Deep breath, let's cross the aisle. Elisa Maza. If the Demona case is about the love you can't erase, the Elisa case is about the love you choose. Actively, deliberately, every single day, despite every reason not to. And here's what I need you to understand right up front. Elisa Maza had no reason to love Goliath. None, zero. She owed him nothing. There was no species bond pulling them together. No shared history stretching back centuries. No biological imperative. No arranged pairing. No cultural expectation. Nothing. Elisa is a human woman, a detective. She has a career, a family, a life that functions perfectly well without gargoyles in it. She could have walked away after the first night on the roof. She could have reported the gargoyles to her captain. She could have treated them as a case, filed it away, and moved on. Nobody would have blamed her. Nobody would have even ever known. But she didn't. She looked at Goliath, a 7-foot stone creature who had just woken up in a world he didn't understand. And she saw a person, not a monster, not a threat, not a curiosity, a person. And she chose to help him, right? And then she chose to protect him. She chose to fight for him. And then somewhere along the way, without either of them planning it or wanting it or knowing how to handle it, she chose to love him. And that choice cost her everything. Think about what Elisa sacrifices for this relationship. She lies to everyone she works with. She puts her career at risk every single day. She can never tell her friends about the most important person in her life. She can never have a normal relationship with a human man because her heart belongs to someone she can't even explain. She goes to work every morning carrying a secret that would end her career, her credibility, and possibly her freedom if it ever came down to it. And she does this willingly, not because she has to, because she chooses to. Here's why this matters. Demona's love for Goliath was born in a world where they were already connected. Same species, same clan, same life. Loving Goliath was the default for Demona. The expected path, the easy choice, not emotionally easy, but structurally easy. No barriers, no prejudice, no impossibility, just two gargoyles being gargoyles together. Elisa's love for Goliath is the opposite of easy. It is a love that requires daily acts of courage. Every time Elisa climbs to the top of that clock tower, she is choosing Goliath over normalcy, over safety, over the life she could have had every single night. And she never complains about it. She never throws it in his face. She never says, look at what I'm giving up for you. She just shows up again and again and again. And if you grew up watching this show, think about what that taught you about love. It taught you that love isn't about convenience. It isn't about finding someone who fits neatly into your existing life. Real love, the kind of love that changes you, the kind of love that matters, sometimes asks you to rebuild your entire world around another person. And either you're willing to do that or you're not. And Elisa is willing, without reservation, without complaint, with her whole entire heart. That is powerful. That is revolutionary for a 1990s animated show. And honestly, it's revolutionary for storytelling, period. Okay? Let me talk about how the show builds this relationship, because the construction of Goliath and Elisa's love story is one of the most impressive feats of serialized storytelling in animation history. Goliath and Elisa don't fall in love in a single episode. They don't have a meet cute and then immediately start flirting. Their love develops across 65 plus episodes of mutual respect, shared danger, honest disagreement, and quiet moments of connection that the show trusts the audience to notice. It's a big deal. In the early episodes, Elisa is Goliath's guide to the modern world. She's the one who explains cars and telephones and pizza. Yes, pizza becomes important. Don't laugh. She's his translator, his anchor, his first real friend in the strange new century. And Goliath is learning. He's learning to trust a human after what humans did to his clan, after 1,000 years of stone sleep caused by human betrayal. He is extending trust to this woman, and every episode where she proves worthy of that trust is another brick in the foundation of their love. And the show does something that I think is genius. It doesn't make the relationship the A plot for most of the series. Goliath and Elisa are always there, always partners, always gravitating toward each other. But the show surrounds them with other stories. Clan, politics, Xanatos' schemes, Demona's attacks, the emergence of new characters. And through all of it, Goliath and Elisa are in the background, getting closer, getting more comfortable, getting more essential to each other. Until one day you look up and you realize, oh, they're in love. When did that happen? And the answer is, it happened in every single episode, one tiny moment at a time. This is what sets Goliath and Elisa apart from almost every other animated couple. Their love feels earned. By the time we get to Hunter's Moon, when they finally have to confront what they feel, you're not surprised, you're relieved, because you've been watching this build for 65 episodes, and you've been screaming at your screen for, I don't know, let's just say it already, you know? And when Elisa tells Goliath in the most painful way possible, trying to push him away because she thinks it's the right thing to do, it's not that I don't care, it's that I care too much. That line lands because we've seen those 65 episodes. We know what she's talking about. We've watched her fall, and it hurts because we fell with her. Demona and Goliath's love was a bonfire, intense, immediate, all-consuming. But Goliath and Elisa, theirs was a candle lit in the dark, growing steadily, stubbornly, despite every wind that tried to blow it out. And a candle that survives the wind is more precious than a bonfire that burns itself to ash. Okay. Elisa sees Goliath as he is now, everything he is. Here's where the Elisa case gets really sharp, and this is the argument that I think tips the whole debate. Demona loves the Goliath of 994 AD. Let me say that again. Demona loves the version of Goliath that existed before the massacre. the warrior, the clan leader, the gargoyle who hadn't yet been softened by 1,000 years of loss and a friendship with humanity. When Demona looks at Goliath, she sees what he was, and she's perpetually frustrated that he's not that anymore. She wants him to hate humans with her. She wants him to fight with her. She wants the old Goliath back, the one who existed before Elisa, before Manhattan, before empathy changed him. Elisa loves the Goliath of now. Elisa doesn't need Goliath to be who he was. She doesn't need him to go backward. She loves the gargoyle standing in front of her, the one who reads Shakespeare in the library, who watches over the city at night, not because it's his territory, but because he cares, who has learned to lead not through dominance, but through compassion. She loves the Goliath who has grown. And more than that, she helped him grow. She challenged him. She pushed back when he was wrong. She showed him a world bigger than clan politics and castle walls. This is the fundamental difference between the two loves. Demona wants to return to the past. Elisa wants to build a future. And Goliath, the Goliath we know, the one who has lived through everything, is a creature oriented toward the future. He woke up in a world he didn't understand, and he chose to engage with it rather than rage against it. This is who he is. And Elisa matches that energy. Demona doesn't. And here's the part that nobody talks about. Elisa is Goliath's equal in a way that Demona never was. Even in 994 AD, Demona deferred to Goliath on clan decisions or undermined him behind his back. She never fully partnered with him. She either followed or she schemed. There was no middle ground. Elisa doesn't defer. Elisa doesn't scheme. Elisa walks up to a 7-foot gargoyle warrior with 1,000 years on her and says, "You're wrong, and here's why," to his face. And Goliath listens. He respects her. He values her perspective. He changes his mind because of her. Their relationship is a genuine partnership between equals. And that is rare, not just in animation, but in storytelling, period. Elisa challenges Goliath to be better, not be more like a gargoyle, not be more like a human, just better, more compassionate, more open, more willing to see complexity. And Goliath challenges Elisa right back to be braver, to fight harder, to believe in things that seem impossible. They make each other more. That's what the right partner does. They make you more of yourself, not less. And I need to say this because I don't think it gets said enough. Elisa Maza is one of the most groundbreaking characters in the history of animation. Full stop. She's biracial, half Native American, half African American. She is a woman in a male-dominated profession who is never, ever reduced to a stereotype. She is never the damsel. She is never the love interest who exists only to give the hero something to fight for. She has her own storylines, her own agency, her own moral code. She saves Goliath as often as he saves her, maybe more often. And she is never at any point in the series defined by her romantic relationships. Do you understand how rare that is? How rare it still is. A woman of color who is the co-lead of a major animated series, who is fully realized, fully competent, never sexualized, never diminished, never there just to be someone's girlfriend. Gargoyles gave us that in the mid-90s on weekday afternoon television for kids, and the industry is still trying to catch up. Let's just sit with that. So when I say Elisa is worthy of Goliath's love, I'm not just saying she's a good match for him. I'm saying she is one of the most important characters in the medium. And the fact that Goliath, this mythic, Shakespearean, larger-than-life warrior, chooses her, that tells you everything about what this show values. It values strength that doesn't require superpowers. It values courage that doesn't require claws. It values a woman who shows up, does the work, and refuses to be anything less than who she is. That's Elisa, and that's why she wins this debate. Period. End of story. Okay, we're going to get into the vocal performances again because Keith David and Salli Richardson are the reason this relationship works, full stop. On paper, Goliath and Elisa shouldn't work. Interspecies romance in a kid's show, a human woman falling in love with a being who turns to literal stone every sunrise. It sounds ridiculous. It sounds It should sound ridiculous, obviously, but it doesn't. And the reason it doesn't is because Keith David and Salli Richardson made us believe. Keith David brings this warmth to Goliath when he talks to Elisa that is completely different from how he talks to anyone else in the show. With the clan, he's the leader, authoritative, protective, commanding. With enemies, he's the warrior, fierce, unyielding, dangerous. But with Elisa, his voice drops into this register that is somehow both powerful and gentle. There's this tenderness that Keith David finds, and I've listened to these recordings with studio headphones, studying them frame by frame. This tenderness where you can hear Goliath actively choosing to be soft, choosing to lower his guard. And for a character who is literally a stone warrior, that softness is the most radical thing he does. And Salli Richardson matches him note for note. I talked about this in part 2 of the deep dive, how she voices 2 different Elisas depending on who she's talking to. With other characters, Elisa is sharp, professional, guarded. With Goliath, she drops into her real register, warmer, lower, more honest. And the audience might not consciously notice, but they feel the difference. They feel which version of Elisa is the truth. There's a moment, and I'm going to get specific because this is the kind of thing that only voice actors notice. There's a moment in the series where Elisa says Goliath's name and she puts this tiny rising inflection on the last syllable, Goliath. It's almost a question, almost a hope. And that one inflection choice tells you more about her feelings than an entire monologue could. Because the questioning in her voice isn't, are you there? It's, is this real? Can this actually be real? Am I allowed to love you? I literally get chills every time I'm talking about it because that is what voice acting at the highest level looks like. It's not about big dramatic reads. It's about the inflection on a single syllable that breaks someone's heart. Okay? And here's the contrast with Marina Sirtis as Demona. When Demona says Goliath, there's weight, there's history, but there's also ownership, possessiveness. How does she say it? Goliath, I don't know. Like she's staking a claim, like his name belongs to her. And maybe once upon a time it did, but the difference between Salli's Elisa and Marina's Demona saying the name, well, it tells you everything about the difference between these two loves. One says, you're mine. The other says, you're you, and I'm so grateful you exist. Cheesy, I know, but you know, the deeper questions, first love versus right love. Okay, let me step back from the specific characters for a minute and talk about what this debate is really about. Because underneath all the gargoyle lore and the voice acting analysis and the scene breakdowns, there's a question here that has nothing to do with animation and everything to do with being human. Can you love someone who hates what you love? That's a Demona question distilled to its essence. Goliath's best friend is a human. His most trusted ally is a human. The person he loves is a human. His entire worldview is built on the belief that humans and gargoyles can coexist. And Demona wants to exterminate humanity. She doesn't just dislike humans. She wants them gone. All of them. Right now, like yesterday. How do you go home to someone who wants to destroy everything you care about? How do you look across the dinner table at a person whose deepest conviction is the annihilation of the people you've spent your entire modern life protecting? You can't. That's the answer. You just can't. Love is not enough to bridge that gap. Not when the gap is, this destructive ideology. But, and here's where it gets messy, what if the ideology came from legitimate pain? What if the hatred is a scar, not a choice? Does that change anything? I think it explains it, but it doesn't change it because at a certain point, the reason why someone hates becomes less important than the fact that they hate. And Goliath, who has chosen love over and over and over again, who has chosen trust over and over and over again, cannot build a life with someone who has chosen the opposite. Their values are fundamentally, irrevocably opposed. And shared history can't fix that. A shared child can't fix that. A shared species can't fix that. Is shared history enough to sustain love, or does love need to grow? This is the question underneath the question. Demona's argument is essentially, we were in love, therefore we are in love. But love isn't a state you achieve and then maintain by default. Love is a practice. It's something you do every day through your choices and your actions and your willingness to show up for another person. And Demona stopped doing love a long time ago. She held on to the idea of love, the memory of what she and Goliath had, but she stopped doing the work of love. She stopped compromising. She stopped listening. She stopped growing. It's a lot. Elisa, meanwhile, does the work every single day. She shows up. She shows up. She listens. She challenges and is challenged. She grows alongside Goliath instead of trying to freeze him in a version of himself that no longer exists. She is practicing love in real time. And that practice, that daily choice, is what makes their love alive instead of fossilized. Here's another question that keeps me up at night. What's the difference between first love and right love? Because Demona is Goliath's first love. And first love is powerful. It shapes you. It defines you. It lives in your bones in a way that nothing else ever quite does. You never fully forget your first love, and you never fully stop wondering, what if? That's just the reality of being a person or a gargoyle who has loved and lost. But first love isn't always right love. Sometimes first love teaches you what you need, and then right love gives it to you. First love shows you who you are. Right love shows you who you can become. And for Goliath, Demona was the love that showed him what he's made of. His loyalty, his capacity for devotion, his willingness to fight for someone. But Elisa is the love that shows him what he can build. A bridge between worlds, a future that's bigger than his past, a life defined not by what he lost, but what he's creating. It's powerful. What does Goliath's choice say about all of us? Let me connect this to real life, because I think this is where the debate transcends the show. We have all had a Demona, and I don't mean we've all dated someone who tried to commit complete destruction, obviously. But we have all had that person, the one we share history with, the person who knows us from before, the person whose love feels like home because it is home, or at least it used to be. The person we keep going back to in our minds, wondering, what if they changed? What if things were different? What if the version of them that I loved came back? And we have all had, or we all deserve to have, an Elisa, the person who sees us as we are today, not who we were, not who they wish we'd become, just us right now in all our messy, imperfect, still figuring it out glory. The person who challenges us and supports us and shows up every day, not because of what we share from the past, but because of what we're building toward the future, okay? And the Goliath choice is the hardest choice any of us ever have to make. Do you hold on to the love that's familiar, or do you reach for the love that's right? Because here's the thing nobody tells you about letting go of a Demona. It means accepting that the person you loved is gone. Not dead, maybe not dead, but gone. At least in the form you knew them. And that grief is real. That loss is real. You are mourning a living person, and there is no closure because they're still out there being someone else, being someone you don't recognize. And every time you see them, you see the ghost of who they were overlaid on the reality of who they are. And it's agonizing, complete and total torture. Goliath carries that grief every time he fights Demona, every time he has to stop her from doing something terrible. He's not just fighting a villain, he's fighting the ghost of the person he loved most in the world. And that is a pain that never fully goes away. But, and this is what the show understands so deeply, choosing to carry that grief while also choosing to love someone new, that's not betrayal, that's growth. That's saying, I honor what we had, and I grieve that it's gone, and I am still capable of love. Moving forward is not the same as forgetting. Goliath doesn't forget Demona. He doesn't pretend their love didn't happen. He carries it with him, but he carries it as a scar, not as a chain. And there's a world of difference between those two things, honestly. Does Demona deserve redemption? I think she does. I think everybody deserves the opportunity for redemption. And Greg Weisman, the creator of Gargoyles, has explored this in the comics, in the extended canon. the slave labor graphic comics, and later the Dynamite run continued the story beyond the television series. And Wiseman has talked openly about Demona's long arc. He's hinted that her story is ultimately one of redemption, but on a timeline that is almost incomprehensibly long. We're talking centuries more. We're talking Demona hitting rock bottom so hard that the bottom breaks, and only then beginning the slow, painful crawl back to who she was. Wiseman has described it as one of the great tragedies of the Gargoyles universe that Demona will eventually find peace, but not in time to get Goliath back, not in time to undo what she's done. The redemption comes, but it comes too late for the love story, and that is so achingly sad that I almost can't stand it. The question of whether Demona can be saved is one that the franchise has never fully closed the door on. And I love that. I love that the show doesn't write her off as irredeemable, because writing someone off as irredeemable is its own form of giving up. And Gargoyles is a show that never gives up on anyone. But, and this is crucial, Demona's redemption cannot be Goliath's responsibility. You cannot love someone into healing. You cannot sacrifice your own peace and your own growth to be someone else's rehab clinic. That is not love. That is codependence. And Goliath, after 1,000 years of loss, after finally finding peace and partnership with Elisa, does not owe Demona the rest of his life as penance for a love that she chose to destroy. Demona's redemption, if it comes, has to come from Demona, from her own reckoning, her own choice, her own decision to put down the hatred and pick up pieces of who she used to be. And maybe, if that day comes, she and Goliath can find a new kind of relationship. Not romantic, but compassionate, co-parents to Angela, former loves who wish each other well, two old warriors who fought on opposite sides and finally found peace. That would be a beautiful ending for Demona, and it wouldn't require Goliath to sacrifice the love he's built with Elisa. Okay, you know what's coming. You've been waiting. Let me tell you where I land officially. I mean, you can kind of guess from before, but officially, Goliath belongs with Elisa Maza, and I will fight you on this. Not because Demona's case isn't compelling. I just spent 20 minutes making it as compelling as I possibly could, and I meant every word. The tragedy of Demona and Goliath's love is real. What they had was real. What they lost is devastating. And the what if she healed argument is genuinely heartbreaking, because in another timeline, in a kinder world, maybe they could have found their way back to each other, okay? But we don't live in another timeline, and neither does Goliath. We live in this one, the one where Demona chose hatred, the one where 1,000 years of pain calcified into ideology, the one where the woman Goliath loved became someone who would burn the world to ash and call it justice. And in this timeline, Elisa Maza is the greatest love Goliath could ever hope for, because she doesn't love him despite what he is. She doesn't love him because of what he was. She loves him because of who he is. Right now, today, in all his complexity and contradiction and impossible, beautiful otherness. Elisa's love is a daily act of courage. Every morning she wakes up and chooses this impossible, inexplicable world-defying love. She chooses the man she can never introduce to her coworkers, the man she can never grow old with in the way humans grow old, the man whose very existence is a secret she'll carry to her grave. And she chooses him anyways, not because it's easy, not because it's familiar, because he is her person and she is his, and no amount of impossibility can ever change that. And Goliath's choice to love Elisa, it's the most important thing his character ever does. More important than leading the clan, more important than defeating Xanatos, more important than surviving 1,000 years of stone. Because when Goliath chooses Elisa, he is saying, I am not defined by my past. I am not limited by my species. I am not owned by my trauma. I choose love that grows over love that decays. I choose the future over the past. I choose to believe that the world can be bigger than the one I was born into. And Demona chooses the opposite, and that breaks my heart genuinely, because she was worthy of love once. She was capable of love once, and somewhere inside her, she still is. But you cannot save someone who refuses to be saved. You cannot love someone back from a ledge they've chosen to stand on. All you can do is grieve who they were, respect who they are, and turn toward the person who is standing next to you, reaching for your hand, saying, I'm here, I choose you every day, no matter what. That's Elisa. That's always been Elisa. And that is my answer. You're welcome. Okay, but I will say this, and I need the Demona stands to hear me. You are not wrong to love Demona. You are not wrong to mourn what she and Goliath could have been. The beauty of this show is that both loves are real. Both loves matter. Goliath's love for Elisa doesn't erase what he felt for Demona. It doesn't do that at all. It exists alongside it. He carries both. And the fact that he can carry the grief of one love while building the hope of another is what makes him the greatest character in the history of animated television. Yes, I said what I said. I stand on it. Huzzah. All right, guys, I've given you everything I've got. Almost an hour of the messiest, most emotionally honest Gargoyles debate I'm capable of having. And now it's your turn. Who does Goliath belong with, Demona or Elisa? I want to hear your answers and your reasoning. Don't just comment Elisa or Demona. Tell me why. Tell me which argument which argument got to you. Tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me where I'm right. Tell me what thing I missed, because I know there's always something, and you guys find it every time. If you haven't already, please go watch the full 3-part Hunter's Moon deep dive, part 1, part 2, and part 3. They're all linked in the description, and they're pinned in the comments. This bonus episode is the cherry on top of the sundae that's been building across 4 hours of content, and it hits different when you've watched it all together. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the bell, like the video. It makes an enormous difference for a small channel like mine. Every subscriber, every like, every comment helps this show reach the people who need it, the Gargoyles fans who have been waiting decades for someone to take this show as seriously as it deserves. And that person is me. Haha. And I want to run a poll. I'm going to put one up in the community tab. Who does Goliath belong with, Demona or Elisa? And I am fascinated to see how it splits, because based on the comments I've been getting on the trilogy episodes, this fandom is divided, and I love that. I love that for us, you know. One last thing, working on this series, diving this deep into Gargoyles, really sitting with these characters and their choices and what they mean, has been one of the most rewarding things I've done on this channel. This show changed me when I was a kid, and it's still changing me as an adult. As a voice actress, as a storyteller, as a singer, as a person who believes that animation can do anything, can tell any story, can explore any emotion, can reach into your chest and grab your heart and make you feel things you didn't know you could feel. Gargoyles did that. Greg Weisman, Keith David, Salli Richardson, Marina, Sirtis, the entire cast and crew, they made something that matters, something that lasts. And the fact that we're still debating who Goliath should love 30 years later, that's the highest compliment a love story can receive. Thank you for being here. Thank you for caring. Thank you for making this the best community on the internet for people who take animation seriously, like myself. I'm Lindsey. You've been listening in with Lindsey, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Listen in with Lindsey.